sure that we are over it. And now that it came back, it's much more difficult. Because now we are much less hope, with much less hope. We don't expect it to be short. We don't expect any end of it. It's much more difficult when you're again in the bad situation. And I just mentioned that I thought about it on verse number 4, that they were actually going around in the desert of Sinai for 39 years, and then they come close to the land of Israel at Horar, which is quite a northern part of the southern part of the desert, and they are close to the land, and then they are sent back again towards the Red Sea and to go around the Dome, which is a point of a breakdown, because they were so close after all these years, and they expect to finally to go into this holy land, and then they are sent backwards. And it's similar to our condition now. That's kind of a breakdown point. And we see it in Israel now. There are a lot of complaints, protests, complaints about the government. Nobody believes in the leadership, in anything, because it's quite desperate situation when you are back into this what looks like an endless journey.
I think that's helpful also to understand the situation of the people of Israel there in the desert, but also to understand our situation in many parts of the world today. Yeah, thank you for that. Elisa?
I just had another thought. It's about responsibility, because here we have the people of Israel blaming God for their situation, which is obvious at a first glance. But if we are going back and thinking about it, it was Israel who started this whole brother conflict between Israel and Edom, or Jacob and Esau, and so on. So maybe Israel is actually responsible for now having to return, because this need to return is caused by the brother conflict. And that's also something. We now have religious communities who say that Corona is a heavenly punishment or sign or whatever, but maybe this is just a way of trying to blame God instead of humans, because we know that many humans were also actively, for example, oppressing information about the virus, like in Austria, where there was this one hotspot, and the hotel owners didn't contact the authorities and so on, and that's why many people in other European countries also got the virus. And yeah, so maybe this question of responsibility and of blaming God instead of humans, although we know that humans are actively playing a role in what is happening, is a parallel in the situations.
Thank you very much. It's interesting to find these lines, and we are in the midst of the discussion, of course, now, what it might mean, and the question of human responsibility showing up is surely one we have to talk about. Axel, I saw your voice.
Yes, I'm looking at the role of Moses, and we have already observed that he did not take the chance to give a sermon, and I think that's another point. Not making short explanations, giving long sermons, and seeing some missionary opportunity and so on, just doing what is needed. I mean, Moses was, the people asked him to pray, and he prayed, and that was it. So this is quite interesting to me.
I totally agree, Axel, because this is my impression I had in the last weeks. All too often, there are really very, very many bad sermons these days. maybe not so many in Germany, but quite a lot in the United States, maybe in other parts of the world as well, sermons of people who know too much and who connect the crisis to some strategies they have already had for years, and now suddenly they know, oh, with this crisis, God wants to show us X, Y, and you can put something in, and it's a lot, of course, you can put in here, and that's too easy. And this text here shows that Moses is not the interpreter. Moses does not tell them, this is because you did X, Y, but because the people themselves realize something. And this is, of course, something which may happen. The crisis may always have a function to people. They may be interrupted and they may think anew about something, but it's what they do and not what someone tells them, which may be right. And I think that's absolutely on the line. Axel, you mentioned now, and I really read really terrible sermons on, well, maybe one of the most strange sermons. You can have opinions whatever you want to, but there was a sermon of someone who said that the virus was sent by God in order to prevent the gay pride parades, the gay pride demonstrations happening. And so it was God showing us that he does not want these demonstrations, which is of course completely crazy in this aspect, but things like that could happen. And on the other hand, here people realize themselves, we've sinned. And that's a totally different perspective, I think.
It's wonderful. And if I may add to your point of view, that if Moses would have told them, you sinned by complaining, your complaining was a sin, so stop complaining. It doesn't work. It's too complex, like you said. Complaining is an outward manifestation of thinking process. So you can make a beautiful sermon about not complaining, so people will keep their mouth shut, but it will not work. It's meaningless. Mm-hmm. It's some process. So usually it takes a tremendous, like 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to get rid of this complaining and accept responsibility. And here it's done all at once with the serpents. It's really amazing. Mm-hmm. But it's a major change, major complex change. It's not just telling them you sinned, stop sinning. I'll say a beautiful sermon, and that will change you. Did you ever manage to change a community with a sermon?
That's a very good question for a homiletician. I'm not so sure. You know that many people only hear what they want to hear. This is what we learn from the aesthetics of reception. People hear what they already know and just take these words. So it's very hard to change people by just speaking. It's absolutely, maybe that's God's experience as well, because he said enough to the people, and now it's the serpent's chance in order to bring them back. And that's really, this is what happens. They immediately say, Chatanu, we sinned. And that's a total difference when people say Chatanu compared to a preacher telling them you sinned. That's maybe the whole thing at this point.
It's a wonderful point.
Yeah.
And do you try to teach that, to bring people to say Chatanu instead that you sinned? Can you? It'll be very illuminating if after Tuvia's thing you could show us some tips.
No, but that's one of the big challenges, that Luther, in the first of his 95 theses, that your whole life, the whole life of a Christian should be a life of repentance, Buße. And this is something which is very, very hard to tell people, because that's not the nice way religion usually deals with people, saying you are okay or whatever. And repentance does not mean just once in your life, give your life to Jesus. It's a every day and every day and every day. That's the point. Axel and Sonja.
Yes, and another interesting point is the people before the people said we sinned, they actually looked at their demons, so to say. They did not avoid it. They did not try to push them away, but they faced them, and maybe this is necessary in order to be able to say, I've sinned. So maybe this is a process that we can observe here.
Can you compare it to, not to the corona, but something like the Holocaust? The horror that you see, the nightmare that you see.
What would you say, Axel? Would that be a perspective? It's hard for us to answer, right?
No, I'm not talking about Germany. I'm talking about humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to change your perspective. Or in order to be able to change your perspective, you have to look at that horror. I mean, I would say what went wrong, what could have done everybody to prevent this from happening. And if you see what, I mean, when I work as historian, I'm watching how the strategies of people, how they react on crises or whatever they experienced, and I do that in order to get aware of my blind spots and so on, and so this is maybe something you can learn. I'm very careful because it's very a difficult issue, I would say.
But in Germany, when we see the last 70 years, it really took some time until people were ready to really look at the horror and to really be aware of what happened. It was not immediately after World War II. When you read the reactions of the churches, they first of all always had this balanced view. We did a lot of good things, but on the other hand, there were some problems, but we really faced the horror and the responsibility we have had that really took a lot of years. And here in the desert, it happens immediately, almost immediately.
And it still does. I mean, really facing the horror and taking responsibility. There are enough people who want to reject or they don't want to expose themselves to the questions of the Holocaust and so on.
And when we discuss about a Holocaust monument in Berlin, we had this discussion that we don't want to have this monument in the midst of our capital because people don't want to see it, to be reminded of what happened again and again. That's part of the problem. And actually, it's interesting here that God commands Moses to build this serpent and to put it on a rod. So this is what you have to see, what you have to look at in order. But that's maybe something Tuvia wants to talk about later, because that's the interesting thing, that the deadly, the fiery snakes have to be watched, looked at, and not forgotten. This is not something which lies behind us. But Sonia, you wanted to share another point, right?
Yes, and really another point, because more basic. The question that came up in my mind was, with what questions do I approach the text? And I find it funny that in a crisis, people approach biblical text always with the question, where does evil come from, to try to make meaning out of it. And I mean, this is a reflex I find in myself too, but I also think that when I approach the text in that way, I stop listening to the text and I try to use it and usually misuse it, because there's something unexplainable about evil in the sense of making meaning out of it, not where the coronavirus come from natural wise, that is, but what is the meaning behind it. So I try to stop at one point asking that question, especially with biblical texts, and try to reapproach them from another perspective, meaning how can I listen to them in the situation I'm in? How can I deal with the situation and not focus on the question, why is it happening? Where does it come from? What is the meaning behind this? But what can we learn from it? How can we deal with it? And I think this is a beautiful passage for that kind of approach, because the community is gathering around a new center, and it comes back as a community. And I think if the coronavirus taught us something, then the interconnectedness of our human being and the world, and how it spreads, and how we have what is the importance of solidarity in this to deal with this crisis. So I just wanted to refocus the question with what do I approach text and with what question.
That's a brilliant point hermeneutically. I have to think about it, but I think that's really a point. Meaning making always means that you somehow intellectually get out of maybe even your responsibility, because you have some meaning in it and you are back in your old frame, in your old framework. Whereas here something else happens. It's a real reorientation. You're right. It's a real reorientation of what happens here. That's an amazing point. You know that there are quite a lot of theologians I don't like so very much in my German context, who always say that religion is all about meaning making, and that sermons help people to find meaning in life, and that it's all about meaning making. And I absolutely agree. That's a dangerous hermeneutics to fit things into it again.
If I may add a point, I loved what you said, Sonia. And I think the advantage of the text and of our reading, that without paying attention, we fall into the text. And with sermons, you are kept away from the text. You look at the text as a scientist looks like you said about at the frog, but not even if you don't dissect it, if you don't kill it, still you're not in it. And once you read it for yourself and you see the discussion here, you simply go into it and you are involved with the text. You're rewriting it now. When it's not hermeneutics, it's you are rewriting the text. We are rewriting the text.
But the amazing thing, of course, is, Rav Shabtai, that there are some homiletics in our German tradition and in the US American who would try to do exactly this when preaching, not preaching about biblical text, but preaching in. And the hermeneutics which takes you in the text and what happens there. At least this is what I try to teach my students. I don't know if I'm so successful.
There is one difference, that if you do it and you tell the people, watch how I do it, it will not work.
Yeah, that's right. You may have to do it in a way we do it together, reading. Yeah, that's maybe a point. Do we have any more aspects you want to say at the moment on this big, huge theme? Because maybe I would like just for a second, if you turn your page, you have another text and we just have to read one verse of it. 2 Kings 18.
Beautiful.
2 Kings 18, and maybe just one verse before I give the word to Tuvia, and it's verse 4. We jump in history a lot of years. We jump from the desert to the time of the kingdom of King Hezekiah, and we hear what Hezekiah, one of the very, very good kings, you all know him, and you all know when he lived around, what he did. And maybe someone could read verse 4 to us. Oh, we do it in 3 languages again. Suriel, would you be ready to read the Hebrew?
I don't find the verse here.
2 Kings.
It's in the text 15. That you sent to us, or?
כן, זה עמוד 4.
I don't see
yeah,
it.
page 4.
Page 4, let me see.
And here you have Pasuk Dalet,
פסוק ד'.
Amud 4.
הוא הסיר את הבמות?
כן,
Yes.
אבל תתחיל
נכון.
אולי בשלוש, פסוק ג'.
About Chizkiah, okay.
Okay, let's read 3 and 4. Tuvia, do you want to read it now to us?
Okay, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Without the melody, I'm not like Zolt. I
You
can't.
don't have to. And
I
Shol
can't do
Pala
it
is
so
not with us
beautifully
now.
like he does it. ויעש הישר בעיני אדוני, ככל אשר עשה דוד אביו. הוא הסיר את הבמות ושיבר את המצבות, וחרט את האשרה, וכיתת נחש הנחושת אשר עשה משה, כי עד הימים ההמה היו בני ישראל מקטרים לו, ויקרא לו נחושתן.
Thank you very much. So I think you all read it in your own language or in the English version. Here we have some very, very interesting historical or at least biblical information about what happened with this serpent, with this snake. That the people of Israel burned incense to it and called it Nehushtan, and it had to be destroyed by Chizkiah. And that's amazing, and I don't really get it, what happened here. So there was this tradition, there was this serpent, and Chizkiah somehow had to destroy it. I don't know, how do you read what happened here? How do you understand what happened here from this symbol in the desert, which was God's symbol given to the people in order to live when they look at it, and now that it had to be destroyed? Or Tuvia, let me ask you again, is this something you want to talk about now? Then I give you the floor first, and we don't try to answer this question.
I'm quite in an embarrassing situation because I prepared something very simplistic about the question about this bronze snake and to understand its curative effect on the people. The questions that you are raising now are much more important, much more fundamental about humanity's ability to change, which could make it somewhat different.
This is your area, Tuvia.
What?
But this is really your area.
You know, there's a big question how much psychotherapy really, it's not only sermons, it's whether psychotherapy really changes people.
Okay, but what about Tuvia, when you present us some of your insights now, and we come back to this question then later and afterwards, I would love to hear you and to hear what a psychologist has to say. I think most of you know Tuvia Peri very well, but not all of you know him. He is one of the really famous psychologists in Israel working at Bar Ilan University, and we are very, very glad that for many, many times you have been with us now, and somehow you give us always some very, very good insights in biblical texts and in psychology as well. So let us just hear. I think it will help us. Tuvia.
It's my pleasure, Alexander. It's my pleasure because it takes me out of psychotherapy research with all the statistics and what all this research did, small, unimportant details, to deal with something that is really more fundamental, more big questions of life. So it's my pleasure. Okay. I will try to share with you. As I said, I'm really embarrassed because I prepared something small about reading a bit as a psychologist, reading the text about this this strange magic cure by this bronze serpent or this copper snake. I don't know why it's translated in so many different ways. So I will give a few psychological perspectives of looking into the curative effect of the. I need a permission from the powers above to share a presentation with you.
So you are the power above, Alexander.
So am I the power above, really?
Allow share.
You have to go to security and to allow me to share.
Okay, let me see.
You go to security.
You can be the co-host. Would that help?
Okay, I did it already.
Okay, can I share?
I did it with your permission as the higher authority.
Well, you can.
Okay. Okay, you see the presentation?
Yes.
It doesn't contain, don't worry, it won't be too long. It doesn't contain too much of slides. As I said, I tried to read it, to start to look at it as from a psychological perspective. What was exactly happening there, that this bronze serpent or this copper snake is curative and it's effective in healing people who are beaten by poisonous snakes. That's basically the question that I tried to deal with, and maybe I'll go into the text a bit following some of my thoughts, but I'll maybe touch a bit symbolic parts of the snake, so, from the psychological perspective, okay? So you read everything. The first thing that I think I called it is it a placebo effect, but the first thing that is related to it is Samuel Hahnemann's theory of like cures like. Actually, it's a translation of old ancient beliefs that the like cures the like. So if you are hurt by some kind of a compound that causes an illness, if you will be exposed to a small amount of this poisonous compound, it will cure you. That's the idea behind the homeopathy. They take a molecule of something, of a poison or of something that makes, with higher doses, it causes the symptoms similar to the illness, and they try to expose you to very low or hardly there is anything left of this compound, and you're exposed to it and it cures you. So the idea is, if a snake bites you, if you are exposed to the vision of a snake, somehow it will help you. It will make an effect that you will be cured from the poison by being exposed to the snake in a lower dose. So it's put on the nest, it's put on the pole, and it's far away from you, and you are exposed in a lower dosage of this poison, and so you are cured by it. Exactly how it works, that's a complicated question, but whether there is something chemically inside or biologically effective, or whether everything is only psychological, which brings us to the idea of placebo effect. I don't know if you know, there are a lot of studies that placebo, which means a drug that looks like a drug but contains only neutral powder, sugar or something like that, that doesn't have any curative effect or any biochemical effect, has many times very effective, very strong effect on, for example, on pain. If you give your patient a drug and you tell him, look, that's a very good drug for pain, he will take it. He will be helped by this drug that contains nothing at about 60% of the cases, which means it's very dramatic. This person, Professor Irvin Kirsch, that I mentioned here, he's a professor at Harvard that spends his life on studying placebo effect. And he showed that not only in, for example, pills, antidepressant pills, that are very effective even if they don't contain anything. About half of the effect of any drug is placebo effect. So if you give a drug and you say that's an antidepressant and it contains nothing, about half of the patients that will be helped by the drug are helped by nothing, basically, by placebo effect, only by expecting it. He even showed that even surgeries in the knees of patients, if you do a sham surgery, you put them under anesthesia, you cut something and then you close it and you tell them, look, we repaired everything, many of the patients will be helped by it. So very much of the effect of many of the drugs is actually a placebo effect. How exactly it works, it's not clear. It's not clear. Somehow the expectations to be helped, or the expectations that something will change, not only change your feeling, but sometimes changed biologically, change also your biological response. So sometimes it could be even measured biologically, that the sheer fact that you expect it to be effective and to change something, you will do a brain imaging for a depressed person and you will see changes in his brain, even though he was treated by nothing. He was only told that that's an effective drug. You will have part of the effect of antidepressants by the drug itself. So maybe what we have here, if we take it to the serpent, to the bronze serpent, we have a placebo effect. They were told, look, if you look at this bronze snake on the pole, you will be cured. And it was a very effective placebo effect. Placebo drugs are very, very effective. So we have here only a placebo effect. Somewhat different, and sometimes it's an explanation of some of the effects of placebo, is what is called systematic desensitization or graded exposure. I don't know, I suppose each of you heard something about classical conditioning, about the dogs of Pavlov, that's the best psychological explanation for the way you acquire fears, different kind of strange fears of snakes, of spiders, like in the diagram that I brought here. And the cure for a phobia of snakes, what is called opidiophobia, or a cure of spiders that you see here, is a graded exposure. What you do, you expose the person that has an extreme or a very strong fear response to some creature. You expose him gradually at the beginning to look at the picture, then to look at the bigger picture, then to look at it from a distance, then he has to put it on his hand and things like that. You gradually expose the person to what he's fear of, and at the end of the day, he's cured of his phobia. That's a therapy method that was actually invented by Joseph Wolpe from South Africa in the early 60s, and that's one of the most effective treatments for phobias. So if we understand what happened with the snakes, that the people of Israel developed a phobia of snakes because it killed some people there, then they were treated by putting a copper snake that looks like a snake on a pole that was quite in a distance from them. So it's kind of a graded exposure that of a systematic desensitization to their fear of snakes. So that could be, again, a perspective to look at it. A different perspective that I thought about, which has more to do with the text, is to look at it from a developmental perspective. And what I mean is the small baby is usually totally dependent on his parents. And he believes and he's confident that his parents are omnipotent, because whatever he asks, he's hungry and he cries, they know what he needs, they supply him what he needs, they give him what he needs, they can do everything. So when you are a young toddler or a young baby, you believe that your parents are omnipotent and you are totally dependent upon them. Gradually, with the years, you learn that your parents are not so omnipotent, that their abilities are limited, their capabilities are, you over-evaluated them, and you develop what we call a partial dependence. And if you grow later to adult life, you become a person that is self-sufficient and you have a more realistic parental admiration. You don't think that they are omnipotent. You don't think they can do everything. You know their limitations and you expect more realistic expectation, and you appreciate what they did for you, but it's in a more realistic way. So if you look into the verses, I put here only the English and the Hebrew wordings. At the beginning, the snakes came and bite them and they die. Many people die of the poisonous snakes. So they come and come to Moses and tell him, look, pray to God and he will tell him to take away, or pray towards him that he will take away the snakes from us. So this is the kind of a stage of total dependence and kind of an omnipotence on the powers of Moses and especially of the powers of God. Just we can't do anything. All the powers in your hands. Do whatever you can. Just let us be free of this terrible thing that is attacking us. When God talks with Moses, he tells him, look, I will later say something about this saraf, I don't know how to translate this fiery serpent or fiery snake, what we call, but make a fiery snake and put him on a pole. He tells him, look, you ask me to take away the snakes? No, you'll have to do something. That's kind of a partial dependence. You have to do something. Prepare this bronze serpent, put it on the pole, and then everybody that will look at it everything that will see it, actually, it's vera'at, or everything that will see it will be cured, which is quite magical, but you have to do something in order to get this magic done by the powers of above. What happens at the end? Vayas Moshe et Nachash HaNechoshet, Vayasimeu al hanes. He does what God tells him. Vayayim Nashach HaNachash et Ish, Veibit el Nachash HaNechoshet v'chai. Here, the person has to do a bit more. He has to look to a bit. I don't know. He had to gaze. He has to do something. It's not only that he sees the snake, but he has to do something, and then he will be cured. So there is a kind of a movement that kind of a developmental process that they go through, beginning by believing that they have nothing in their abilities to do, and ending with something that Moses is building the serpent, but there is something that they have to do in order to be saved by God, which is not the total dependence where they begin. So we have a process of maturation, of growth, during the process, that the people gradually, especially if you think about in the bigger picture, they have to go into the land of Israel, where they will have to be responsible for their economy, for their security, for everything. They will not be under the eyes of God that will supply their food or will guide them. So this is a part of the process of growth, of maturation, that they have to do something in order to be saved, and that's what the story tells us, that they grow through this story, which this is kind of a developmental perspective. Now we come to the maybe more interesting and the more complicated symbolic level. What is this symbol of the snake telling us? Which is it's very interesting. You know, I read a chapter in somebody from Yale wrote. He has a chapter there of 32 distinct special characteristics of snakes, because it's a very rich symbol and all over the ancient world, and many times with contradictory symbols. So it's very interesting, and he says that it begins by the natural characteristics of the snake. It's a very special creature, a very strange creature. And I mentioned here at this slide some of them, and I'll try to touch upon some of these. I think it begins by the name Nachash and Saraf. You know, Nachash is a snake. It's a creature, an animal that goes on the ground. Saraf is the name of an angel, actually. A fiery snake is not exactly a natural snake. It's something that is not natural. It's something that is related to the world above, to an angel kind of a creature. And this verses that are playing between the words of it, some calling it Nechashim Srafim that was mentioned before, And it has something to do with the double symbol, the double message of the snake. It has something very much underground, but it has also something that is very much higher up, like in the world of the angels. So that begins with the name, with the name of this creature. But it's also very interesting that in the ancient world, and even in the Bible you see it, it's in our story especially, it's something that kills, but it's something also that cures and gives life. So it's the same creature has in it a double message. It has in it, on the one hand, it's a dangerous, poisonous that kills people, and on the other hand, it has something that it cures. It has something that is related to eternal life, or something to life and health. We know that in many places now the symbol of the snake is related to health, following our story, but it's also related to death, which is interesting that the same creature has a double symbolity, a double kind of two contradictory symbols. I can't think about anything that is similar to that. It's very special with this with the snake. If you look at the last thing that I mentioned, the immortality, I put down here a quote from a paper from 1926. According to Vogelmuth, the sloughing of the serpent's skin appears to the artless and unsophisticated mind as a new snake crawling out of the old one, thus giving rise to the belief in the immortality of serpents. Their capacity of recovery from mutilation strengthened this belief. So in a way, serpents on the one hand, they represent mortality or killing or danger. On the other hand, they represent immortality. They represent the ability to continue to live after they were mutilated. So that's a very, very special kind of a symbol with a double message, or double, how to say, משמעות, שבתאי.
כפול, מה? Double meaning?
משמעות. Double meaning, or double,
Meaning.
maybe not a better word, but it's a double meaning. And I thought about it, you know, that's very, very interesting. The classic symbol of a snake is a phallic symbol, you know, it symbols the snake, sexual sin. That's the most classic symbol related to its physical visuality of the snake, that it's kind of related to sexual sins, which in a way that the snakes is a symbol of sin. But I don't know if you know, there are things that are double in the snake. The first very bold thing is its tongue. It is split into two. But what I didn't know, that the snake also has two penises, which is quite interesting, and it uses both of them. So there is something doubled in the snake, something strange that is double in the snake, and maybe it's related to its double message in the or double meaning in what it symbolizes. Another thing that somehow a snake is a symbol, it's related to being smart. So why is a snake considered to be smart? That's quite interesting. How is that related to wisdom or to being smart? And somehow it's also related to this kind of its curative effect. And what I learned is the snakes are deaf and are voiceless. It's very interesting. It's a creature that is deaf. They don't hear anything, even though we think they hear, because they dance along with the music of the flute, but they actually move in the pace of the movements, not because they hear the music. They are actually deaf. They don't hear the music, and they are also voiceless. So how do they find their prey? They have to be very smart, right? Because if they don't hear anything and they don't have a voice, and And it's also, so they have to be smart somehow. They have a very smart way of moving. They don't have legs, but they are still moving very fast. So this special way of moving in this kind of serpentine movements, it's again, it's something very special, very unique, very smart of this creature. It has also this ability to raise up. Although it lives on the ground, it has this ability to raise up. And it also, in a way, it's self-sufficient. You know, they don't have friends. Usually a snake lives alone, and it looks as if he doesn't eat. He somehow eats sand, or he's self-sufficient, which is again something very special about the snake. But it looks like a very smart creature, and it's a symbol of smartness, which again, I don't know how to, it's a kind of a double. On the one hand, it's a very kind of a low level creature that lives on the ground, hardly seen, and on the other hand, it has this ability to raise up, which may be again related to this immortality, to raise up from death, to raise its head up. Its independence is something very very unique. So what I'm trying to say, that the snake is a symbol of contradictory meanings. And on the one hand, and in our story, it's very strong. On the one hand, it's the symbol of death, and it has also a very interesting way of killing, because it bites, but you don't die from the bite, because if you are bitten by a lion, then the lion kills you by his bite. But the snake kills you in such a smart way that you die with a delay, much later. So it has also some similarities to the way that the sin is at least thought to make its damage. It enters your body gradually. You don't feel when it enters, but gradually it destroys you from inside. So it's again something, you know, on one hand, it's related to the sin, to death, to the end of life. And on the other hand, it's a very smart, very self-sufficient, his abilities to survive in very difficult conditions are very special, and its ability to continue to live after it takes off its skin. These are signs of power. And we know that that snakes were also symbols of power in the ancient world, especially in Egypt. So it goes together in this story, that on the one hand, it's the sin that kills, and on the other hand, it has something in its power that is also it's also curative. Is there anything? Here comes more complicated question. Is there anything curative in sins? I don't know. I don't know what to do with it. So why is the Bible using this creature with this double message, double meaning? Why? On the one hand, it's related to the sin, to doing evil, and on the other hand, it's related to cure. Does it say something about maybe, you know, mitzvah ba'avera? It's called in, I don't know how to translate mitzvah ba'avera. It was
a positive commandment that you perform through transgression. You transgress some commandment in order to, but I would think something more avera lishma.
Maybe, is there anything positive in doing bad, in rebelling God, in complaining? Is there anything there that is not totally bad, that has also a double meaning? I will leave it as a question. Is it only a sin, or does it have something positive in it, like the snake?
But I hope you don't think that desensitization to sin is positive. To desensitize, because people do it. People do little sins, greater sins. Then,
you know, that there is. I am reading Rabbi Cook and things like that. That there is an idea like that. That sometimes you need rebellion is an important part of progression. You need to rebel in order to do some progress. That's an important part. In its extreme, it's let's destroy the world in order to build a new world. But there is something, there is a need for some, you know, if you want to build a better building, you have to destroy something on your way. So maybe there is some idea inside of the symbol of something that is destructive, and on the other hand, it's the destruction is part of constructing. So that's where my imagination reached to this point. So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Tuvia. That was fascinating to have these very, very different perspectives, not having the answer what happened there in the desert, but having quite a lot of different ideas, connecting it to different aspects: homeopathy, placebo effect, graded exposure, and this developmental perspective, and now the symbol of the snake. My question to you, when you are back now with your image, first of all, are there any questions you want to ask to what you heard? Something you want to go in some more detail or did not understand? That would be the possibility now. Annika?
I didn't really get the last part because I'm not sure whether like what you said now is that the serpent represents sin, right? Because
on the
why
one
is that
hand, it
so?
represents sin. Yeah. On the one hand, it represents sin. On the other hand, it represents cure.
But the serpents are sent by God. So does the picture fit?
Yes, but God also commands them to build a bronze serpent in order to be cured. So both poles of this symbol are there in the story. That's what I tried to say.
Yes, I understood that, but I don't like the sin is before, and then the reaction, God's reaction to the sin is the snakes and the bronze serpent. So both are things that are God's idea somehow. I'm just not sure whether it's the picture for sin fits, but we can.
You know, both of this, the way I understand it, I can only say the way I see this, because the story contains inherent in it is a contradictory message about this snake. On the one, it starts by a sin that is punished by a serpent, which is a very kind of dangerous, poisonous. It's a bad thing that happens to the people. And on the other hand, the same creature, at least when it's made of bronze, it becomes their cure. And if we go farther with the verse that we read at Kings about Chizkiah, the same serpent became again something that became kind of an idol, that became something negative. So the serpent has this ability of oscillating between being very positive or being very a symbol of something very negative.
Mm-hmm. So we have some basic ambiguity in it from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe also starting in Genesis 3. Of course, this is a story which is somehow behind in whole humankind and also in the Bible, with this ambiguity of Mm-hmm. Elisa.
I have another question. I don't know if it's too far-fetched, but you also mentioned that the serpent was a power symbol, especially in an Egyptian context. So I thought maybe it's because the Israelites here are complaining about having had to leave Egypt, and maybe this is also related to why God chose the serpents to come as a punishment and also as a symbol for the new community or whatever, because the bronze serpent could also be a kind of reminder of Egypt, or maybe of how it really was in Egypt. And yeah, I just wanted to hear if you think this would be plausible, or if it is too.
I suppose that the punishment by serpents is related to the complaint about why did you take us out of Egypt. I think there is somewhere in the verse about Paro, the Egyptian king, as a snake, or it's
in Ezekiel, God spoke to Pharaoh, the great snakes that dwells in the Nile.
Right, exactly. We need Rabbi Shabtai's brains here. Exactly. So that's maybe you are so you are so missing so much missing Egypt. Okay, I'll give you something of Egypt. So you have snakes. Maybe it has something to do with it. And again, once the snake cures them, it becomes a symbol of power, of something that Chizkiyahu and the kings has to destroy, because it becomes a symbol of too much belief in power. Maybe these movements in the story are related to this ambiguity in the symbol of the snake.
So we are collecting more and more perspectives without giving the answer, which is always great. Collecting perspectives and seeing it from more different angles. Abraham, you have some more.
I am trying to make sense of the whole thing now. Joachim Kugler, a theologian, have a work on the title is In the Cobra's Back, and writing on that and what Peri said now makes sense. The whole idea was that they shifted the authority from God, and if the snake can symbolize authority, they had the mental picture from Egypt. So therefore, when you look at the bronze snake that have the idea of the authority of God that you have in the earlier verses, spoken against, rebelled against, gone against, then you come back to God, and you see this authority of God again. So I'm trying to make sense of that. It has much to do with authority, like he has explained.
I don't know exactly how you reminded me of something I forgot, because if you look into the text, you see there's a lot of speaking. They spoke to Moses and spoke against Moses and against God, and then they spoke and spoke. The word the bear is very much part of the story. And if you think about the voiceless snake, again, as a punishment for talking and as a cure, I think it has something to do, this speaking, and that is so central in this story and in these verses, and the voicelessness of the snake, again, I think it has something in the symbolism of this story.
Thank you very much. So any more questions at this point? I have to admit, Tuvia, that I especially
can you hear me?
Yeah, who is speaking?
It's me. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
You're not. We don't see you, but we hear you. Okay.
I just wanted to mention that even though when Alexander asked about the two kings and Chizkiyahu taking down and destroying the snake, you said that it's too big an issue. I think there's a direct path that leads from what you described and explained to that action. I think it leads directly to there.
Could you say more about it?
I think, I mean, you are the expert here, but there is a road that leads from the kind of therapy that you described to a kind of fetishism.
I need more clarification.
You take the means towards health, but then you turn it into the object of.
See. instead of being a symbol, you make it a concrete kind of.
Yeah, an object of
powerful
adoration.
object.
Yeah.
I see.
And this is why it had to be destroyed later, because this is what people did. Offering incense, burning incense, making it an idol, actually, right? So it's not the symbol which reminds you of something, but the idol you use, you turn into your own
Then it
use.
becomes the sickness.
Mm-hmm. Karl Barth would say it's what always happens when faith turns into religion. That is,
I was going to say, yeah, but yeah.
The basic movement why religion is problematic.
If I will not be too politically incorrect, so the phenomenon of burning incense to the snake happened in the early church with burning incense to the cross. And if we see the cross as a horrible thing, of something that should cure you by seeing the degree of evil that could come, and of good, of course, the connection to God, which is the alternative that Avram spoke about, but it became an object by itself. The void of God.
I think that's maybe one of the things which always happen when I have this very simplistic faith and religion differentiation. Maybe it's only human that faith is very, it's not so easy to have faith, because God sends you somewhere. You have to recognize that you are a sinner. You have to say chatanu again and again. You have this development Luther is talking about in his first thesis, repentance again and again and again. If you have
and then you get Opus Dei.
And then, and when you have religion, it's much easier. You have something you can deal with. You can burn incense. You have it, and it fits into your meaning making, into your life. So maybe that's very, very human in many, many contexts. And this is why it has to be dynamic. Why you need some reformation again and again.
Yes, I meant something more precise than that. What you say, of course, is true about every time faith turns into religion. It's tremendous danger. And we should speak about Samuel, about the ark. That's what's happened then, when they identified the ark with the God. Yes, right. But I think there is something more than that in the view of what Tuvia said. If really the snake mirrors sin, so of course it is something to take responsibility and make the right decisions according to that. It's very difficult. You see that there is a potential for tremendous evil, and even that you see that complaining is, again, not only a sin of words, it's a sin of attitude, which is much deeper and is much rooted. You need to get out of your attitude, and then it becomes a symbol of accepting evil as something that exists. So you say, okay, we accept evil, there is evil, and we hope that God will forgive us if we do the right things. So evil is there, we are evil, we are sinners, so even the confession itself could be destructive. You say, okay, you come, you say it's evil, and this becomes a ceremony. Like Isaiah says about the atonement. You come and you beat yourself, and still you are the same evil people that before. So confronting evil is a dangerous thing, because then you accept evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tuvia agrees. Yeah.
Yeah. I am just going back, thinking about the developmental perspective, that, in a Freudian way, the development goes through sin. You can't develop without sinning. If you are only a good child under your parents, you're not going to grow independent. The sin is the basic energy that pushes you away towards independence. if you think about it, and the Oedipal conflicts, that's what builds you as a man, or as a different person. The fact that you have in some way to sin, at least symbolically. So the way to growth goes through sin, in a way. I don't know what to do with it religiously, but we have your rabbis, we have your preachers, and I'm only contributing psychological sinful insights.
You know that we somehow have a Protestant problem, that the idea of development in faith is, well, you can dispute about it, if something like this is possible, or if we are not again and again sinners and justified every day without any real progression in something you do, but you're just the same person again and again. And of course, the idea of there is some progress, some learning, some continuation is the other idea and the other side, which is there in human life. But the big question, if it is valid for religion as well, or if we just stay the ones we are. Good question, yeah.
So I begin to think that maybe it ties up with the whole picture, because people complained about the pomegranates. Where is Katya? Oh, Katya is with us. The pomegranates that they miss. So Katya is in Esamim, and I saw that when you have, it's very nice to buy pomegranates in the market, but if you grow something and it's yours, it's something totally different. You feel attached to it. So people maybe lacked this feeling of doing something and enjoying because we spoke about trusting God and doing things. I think it's deeper than that. They miss the feeling of something that they produce by themselves, not light food or maybe easy food. They don't want easy food that comes in the morning. They want something that they don't want supermarket pomegranates. They want pomegranate that they grew themselves. And Katya could testify they taste totally different, right? I don't know about pomegranates, but whatever you grow tastes different. And this is what they miss. So they are on the verge of entering the land and experiencing this, and they get frustrated. And maybe the bronze snake is a symbol of, it's a preparation before you go into a land, and you'll not be accompanied by God the whole time on every step. Look, you have to see how to fend for yourself. And fending, I mean, as far as faith goes, fending for yourself and not going down the slippery slope of the moral slippery slope of farmers that see only the narrow interests. They become egotists. So maybe this is the idea, to present them with a symbol of evil, and now it's embedded in you. Okay, you want to go to the land, you have to prepare yourself. And the first preparation is the sin and the serpent.
Interesting. It combines things, yeah.
Tuvia?
I may add a point in a continuation to the fine lecture of Tuvia and the thing that just Rabbi Rappaport mentioned. I would like to add one word that I was waiting to hear this evening, and this is the word responsibility. I think that snake is highly related to the Bible, to responsibility. I would like to mention to all of us that first time in the Bible that we meet snake is when the human being is irresponsible. It was when Adam and Eve were caught in the Garden of Eden, and they are being questioned, why have you done so? They know to say that Adam said it's Eve, Eve said it's the snake, and we know that the snake is related, is attached to irresponsibility. And when you get to this story in Book of Numbers, and we see the Israelites, like Effie mentioned, they knew how to complain, and they were genius in complaining, and they are not responsible. We are not responsible to get our water. We are not responsible to get our food. It's not our responsibility. Moses, give it us. And Rav Shabtai asked in the room, in the separate room that we have been there, what happened? What changed their mind when they saw the snakes? And I think you can see when they are talking, they are saying as follows in chapter 21, verse 7. They said, "Chatan, we are sinners. Dibanu b'Shem vavach." We are taking responsibility for our actions. We are taking responsibility for our talks, and therefore, I think that it's something that is related, and there is a problem because eventually Moses gives them the cure, like Tuvia mentioned. The cure is in the way that the snake looks like, and in the days of King Hizkiah, people again are irresponsible. He said, "We don't have to take any action. We can trust on the snake. He's our semi-god." Okay, so they again irresponsible. And I've heard a wonderful idea many years ago from Rabbi Professor Lamb. He was the head of Yeshiva University in New York, and he said, what is different between responsibility and acharayut? Responsibility in English, like in many other languages, come from responding. For example, in Arabic, when you want to say that someone is responsible, is calling him mas'ul, the one who is being asked. And for example, when we are talking to someone who is responsible, we said, listen, you're responsible, you have to respond. But in Hebrew, when you are saying acharayut, the meaning is coming from acharit, which means there is a destiny. When you're doing something, you have to be aware what is the meaning of your saying. There you have to be aware for your actions. This is the meaning of being responsible. And I think that this is the small lesson that they have to take, all the Israelites, before they entering to the land of Canaan, because now you are going to be responsible. Guys, the kindergarten is over. Enough is enough. We took care of you. We gave you the water. We gave you the food. We gave you the bread. Enough. Now it's your responsibility. And I think this is the idea that's attaching between snake and responsibility. This is my small comment.
Thank you very much, Surya, for this comment.
But by the way, just one sentence that I forgot. During the last few months, I'm working also on research about ethics and the corona, medical ethics and the corona, and I see again that all the idea is again coming when there is a plug. What is the social responsibility and what is the individual responsibility? For example, there is individual responsibility for the medical stuff, but there is also social responsibility of us as citizens to put masks, to not to gather together in closed places. And again, plug is bringing you to rethink again. And you see, I won't join you tomorrow, unfortunately, because I'm teaching. But again, the responsibility is also coming there when we are talking about the ark and the plug that it's come with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Turiel, and thank you for being with us today. And a pity that you won't be able to make it tomorrow. I see two more comments I have here on my list, Sonia and Elisa. Sonia, you raised your hand already some minutes ago.
Yes, thank you, Tuvia, for the different perspectives. I really enjoyed listening to them. And what got stuck with me was the idea of like cures like, not in a medical sense, but more in a philosophical sense, because For me, it makes a lot of sense to look at the text in that way. As I said, I think there's something you cannot understand about sin. There's a dimension you just cannot grasp. There's always the dimension of not being able to understand it. And this is why it made sense to me that they need a reduction of the complexity and put the snake on a stick and to be confronted with it. You need a symbol, you need a narrative in order to repent, in order to grasp your sin. But this is always a reduction. So this is why it makes sense that you have something that is like it to cure it. So you have the snake that confronts your sin as a symbol. And then I think it's also very interesting in the moment where you lose the connection, that this is something that confronts something inside of me in order to heal, or with the goal of healing. And you think you put a snake on a stick and then you have the evil there and I'm here and there's not the interconnection. This becomes the idol, and then it has to be destroyed because there's no relationship between me and what the symbol that confronts me with myself, or something in my inner self. And so for me, it makes a lot of sense that at one point Hiskia said, we have to get rid of the stick, the connection got lost. We think we have placed evil in a box and it has nothing to do with us anymore. And if we put sense and prayers to it, it's there and the connection is lost. So we have to find a new symbol maybe that gets the original function of confronting ourselves with ourselves again. So this is what the idea I got from likes cures likes. It makes a lot of sense for me to have a symbol that reduces the complexity and makes it possible for me to grasp it in a way that it can be dealt with. Yes.
That sounds very interesting, I think.
And from time to time, we have to destroy our symbols. What that may mean for Christianity and for dealing with the cross is a very, very good question. Okay, Elisa.
I liked very much what Tuvia said about responsibility in this passage, and I thought it would also be interesting to read it from a post-colonial point of view, because we have Israel as the colonized people in Egypt, who is now brought to the promised land, to freedom, but it's not yet in the promised land, so it's not yet free. And I think the behavior of Israel is very much the behavior of a people who for a long time didn't have the opportunity to create its own destiny because they were enslaved. And that's maybe also why they are so passive and always turning towards Moses as their leader, as a big figure who apparently is able to deal with every difficulty, but they are not trying to be active themselves and to change something in their situation on their own. And maybe that's also why the bronze snake can be destroyed in 2 Kings, because then Israel is already in the promised land. It's a free people, or at least the southern part is free, and that's why they know also don't need this symbol for a leading figure any longer.
It's really beautiful what you say. As one comment, what you illuminated, the point of Hiskia that became a king and destroyed all the symbols of all the pagan symbols. I think it was deeper than the war against idols. It's something much more. He was a very strong king, and it's amazing. A king needs usually some kind of religion in order to sustain himself. But Hiskia was such a strong king that destroyed all the idols and even the snake, because he was free. Actually, what he offers is freedom. Freedom from all objects. You have no objects, maybe what Alexander will say, the return to faith from religion. So he's a king that takes the people out. very much the reverse of what Moses does. He takes the people out of, not out of Egypt, but out of slavery out of being slaves to their own forms and behaviors and structures. And you see what happens to him, that when he's sick, the sun goes backwards. Yeshaya, when he's sick, Yeshaya promises him that to show that he will be healthy, the sun will go backwards. The shadow will go back in the sundial, will go backwards, meaning you are free from anything, even from the passage of time.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So Tuvia, you said you don't have so much to say. I would say it was very, very inspiring to listen to you and to your many perspectives. So thank you again. I try to give you some virtual applause here again with my, but you already know, my appreciation for what you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't think it is worthwhile now continuing our dialogue for today much longer, because we need some energy for tomorrow morning and for a little presentation by Axel and me on the arts and hermeneutics, starting at 9 a.m. German time, 10 a.m. Israeli time. And then we will read some passages of 1 Samuel, actually a story we as Christians may not know so very well. You, from the Jewish perspectives, may know it very well from childhood onwards. I have to admit that this story of the ark with the Philistines, well, it's not the story I could easily retell if someone told me, now please tell the story of 1 Samuel 4-6 again. So if you feel that tonight you want to read it again, maybe in order to be a bit prepared for tomorrow, you're free to do that. I think for the moment, we have shared really fantastic perspectives on this text in Numbers 20 and Numbers 21. If there is anything someone wants to say, so please raise your hand in order to have the feeling that you are satisfied for today, or that you want to express that you are not satisfied at all, or that you have one thing, one aspect, one idea you want to share now in order not to forget it tonight. You are free to do so. And I saw Katja and Sonia. Katja?
So perhaps Sonia can start because, because mine is more an organization issue. I want to thank everything what we learned today, and it was great and very inspiring. And I have to say something about my meine Anwesenheit. No, how do you say it?
Your presence?
My presence tomorrow morning, because I read in this moment there will be a closure, and I have to go to Jerusalem, and I don't know whether I have to do it very early. So perhaps I will miss the beginning. And I don't know, they will allow only 10 persons in the synagogue. So it might be the same with the churches. So perhaps I don't have to go to Jerusalem. I have to figure out, but it might be that I have to leave very early tomorrow morning, and I will join you in the car, perhaps.
No, don't you dare. It's more dangerous than the corona.
No, this is what Short already did today.
Chapter, you're totally right. I'm so much afraid of the traffic here, and I don't want to be.
Unless you take the train.
No, you know something. Today I informed me about the train. This is on Friday impossible. It's from Nahariya to something, from something to Tel Aviv, from Tel Aviv with the bus to something, and not to Jerusalem. It's out of the mall. So it will be 4 times changing. And in Corona times, 2 times or 3 times with the bus. No, it's not.
No, you are completely right, and we wish you a safe travel tomorrow, and we hope to see you then in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I will try to do everything. This moment, I don't know when I'm leaving, and I'm very, very sad if I will miss some of our very interesting lectures and seminar lessons. We'll see.
Thank you, Katja, for being with us today, and Sonia.
Actually, it's very much in line with what I wanted to say. I cannot join tomorrow for a very happy reason. There is a wedding in the family, a small one, of course, with social distancing, but I cannot be here tomorrow. But it was very nice to be here with you today. And thank you for the discussion. I enjoyed it very much, and I hope to see you soon again. And I wish you a good day tomorrow.
Thank you,
Thank
Sonia.
you.
Enjoy the celebration. It was great to see you today and to listen to your comments and questions and ideas. Thank you very much. So no one else wants to say something, so I will give the last word, of course, to, no, Turiel wants to say a word, and I will give the last word
to say again,
Turiel?
also that I'm sorry that I won't be able to join you tomorrow, and I hope to see you soon, either in Israel or in Germany.
I hope so as well. And anytime online, you know that I hated Zoom and I now get slowly used to it. So
Me either.
that's what we have to do and deal with. Thank you very much for all your inspirations. And the last word I would like to give to Rav Shabtai, if you want.